no more.
I will be silent 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 no more.
No more.
No more.
I wish I could be there with you in person, but unfortunately my schedule doesn't permit it. Still, I'm delighted that Israel's Minister of Tourism, my distinguished colleague Stas Nishaznikov, is representing our government. Today we're working together to strengthen Israel's relationship with Christian communities throughout the world. You will also hear firsthand from Israelis as they express the gratitude that we feel for the unwavering support. When I spoke about the connection of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, but the land is the same land. I'm speaking to you from the land walked by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm speaking to you from the land once ruled by King David and King Solomon. And I'm speaking to you from the land where the Maccabees achieved their miraculous victory. And this is the same land where 2,000 years ago, Jesus preached a message of tolerance and love that is echoed throughout the ages. In returning to Israel, the Jewish people have come home. And I have news for all of Israel's enemies. We're staying home. We are here to stay. We're not going to go anywhere. My friends, it's time that our Palestinian neighbors have the courage to recognize the right of the Jews to a state of their own in the Jewish historical homeland. The refusals of the Palestinians to recognize that right was and remains the root of the conflict. Many of you may recall that in 1947, the United Nations proposed a solution of two states for two peoples, a Jewish state and an Arab state. At the time, there were no Palestinian refugees, no questions of disputed territories, no question of settlements. Only one issue was on the table: the right of the Jews to a nation state in our historic homeland. Now, the Arabs rejected this right, and that rejection remains the reason why this conflict has persisted ever since. And those who would demand that Israel recognize the right of the Palestinians to a state should be equally clear about their demand that the Palestinians recognize the right of the Jews to a state of their own. I think this is the key element to achieving peace. The Palestinians must recognize the right of the Jewish people to their own state. They still have not.
Delighted to be hosted by Pastor John Hagee and his remarkable wife and family at the Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Texas, for an evening of a salute to Israel. 6,000 people standing and waving the Israeli flag and singing Hatikvah. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And a few short months after that, I was again privileged, but privileged in a different way. Returning to Israel, I served in the Israeli Defense Forces as a reserve officer in Operation Kaslet, conducted to protect nearly 1 million Israelis in southern Israel from murderous rocket fire from Hamas in Gaza. And yesterday, I was profoundly honored to enter the White House with my wife Sally, my parents, my father, who fought for freedom from Normandy to the Rhine during World War II, with my son Yoav, who served in a special forces unit in the IDF and was wounded in action against Hamas in Hebron, my daughter Leah, who served in the Golani Infantry Brigade in the Second Lebanon War, and my youngest son Noam, who in 2 weeks will join Special Forces unit in the IDF as well. I entered the White House to present my credentials to the President of the United States as Israel's ambassador to this country. An unspeakable honor, and yet that honor was compounded by the presence in the White House of yet another individual, Buzz Aldrin, one of the astronauts who participated in the Apollo landing on the moon 40 years ago to the day yesterday. And those of us of a certain generation, and I'm of that generation, we will never forget that day, watching TV, a black and white TV, and counting down that seconds until that Apollo landing craft settled down on the moon, thinking to ourselves, my Lord, that we could have lived to have seen this moment, which seems so impossible in our imagination. My friends, Israel in 1969, 40 years ago, was at war with Egypt. Thousands of Egyptian shells would fall every week on Israeli soldiers positioned along the Suez Canal. Israel was in a de facto war with Jordan, which was home to guerrillas who weekly would attack Israeli civilians in settlements along the Jordan Valley and Israeli cities as well. Israel was at de facto war with a Soviet bloc of 13 countries. Israel had hostile relations with China, hostile relations even with India, and a very uncertain alliance with the United States. Today, 40 years later, there is an Israeli embassy in Egypt. There is an Israeli embassy in Jordan. Israel has excellent relations with many of those former Soviet bloc countries. Israel has wonderful relations with China and with India. That same courage that was exhibited by those Apollo astronauts and landing on the moon has been embodied by the people of Israel. And yet we still face grave challenges. We face mortal threats from terrorist groups along our borders. We face a potential existential threat from Iran, whose leaders daily declare their intention to wipe us off the map, and who are assiduously trying to acquire the weaponry to do that. And sometimes we have to admit, sometimes this can be cause for despair. And when that despair strikes, I urge you all to look skyward, to look at the moon, and remember that moment 40 years ago, that glimmering moment of courage, and remember the courage of the Israeli people. Remember the unswerving support of Israel's believers around the world, and specifically this community of American Christians who have stood by us through it all and never, ever wavered. And remember, finally, I think most importantly, the creator of that moment, the creator of the earth and the creator of the universe as well, who has never abandoned us. On the behalf of the government, the people, the state of Israel, I am delighted, I am privileged, and I am honored to say to each and every one of you, Todah Rabah. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Nation's capital. Millions of Christians across America have a deep love for Israel and the Jewish people, and want to stand with us.